And we're about to do a talk now on something that we've most definitely spoken about a lot more over the past few years. And it's about our mental health during our pregnancy and in those early days of having our babies. I think it's so important to feel okay with owning up to not feeling okay. It's a great subject that I think it's good that we are talking more openly about. So I've got a really lovely panel. We are missing one at the moment, but hopefully he will join us soon. The lovely Mark Williams. Oh, we've got Mark. I've heard he is in the green room. We have got him. We are live. So, these things sometimes happen, but he is in the green room. So please, let's welcome my panel to introduce themselves to you on this fascinating talk today. Come on out, guys. Hello, welcome to all of you. Hi, Mark, you made it.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I did. I can relax, though, okay? Oh, yeah, it's good.
So we've got lovely Mark Williams. Please introduce yourself to us.
Yeah, my name's Mark Williams. I campaign for all parents, but I'm known for fathers. And, published author. Yeah, just been campaigning for all parents, really, over the last 11 years. So I believe if you spoke all parents to their mental health, it has far better outcomes to the whole family and that child's development. So that's my work.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mark. And we have got Dr. Poonam with us. Hello, lovely to see you. Please do introduce yourself to us.
So I'm Poonam Christian. I'm a GP based in Glasgow. I'm a senior clinical lecturer at the University of Glasgow. I work in the media, I'm a writer, but most importantly of all, I am a mum to two young children, one who's 7 and a baby that was born in lockdown.
Oh, congratulations. I look forward to hearing a lot more about that as we go through our chat today. Well, you're looking fantastic with a new baby. And we've got the lovely Sophie with us as well. Sophie Birch, please do introduce yourself.
Hello, it's such a pleasure to be here. So I'm also known as the Mama Coach, and I'm creative founder of also Beyond Birth, Mindful Early Guide for Parenting, and groups and practitioner training. I've got 4 of my own children, and I have a lot of lived experience in terms of parental mental health, as well as being a perinatal therapist and coach.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. So I think when the time comes, the journey of becoming a new parent, it's very different. You as a person, there's no doubt about it. You do change when you become a parent, and there's a lot to take on. You can feel a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry. But I will say, in this last year, with the lockdown, that must have got so much harder for people, that uncertainty, the unknown, maybe feeling a little bit isolated as well. So I'm really pleased that we're talking to you guys today. So anybody that's watching, hopefully can join us. Please do ask any questions to our panel. I will be putting them to them. Poonam, I'd love to start with yourself, because you just mentioned that you became a mum once again in lockdown with your new little one. And how was that for you? How did you find it, having your baby in lockdown?
Yeah, so my baby actually we were in lockdown 1, so now we're on different stages of lockdowns. So my baby was born just at the peak of the first sort of wave, and I at the time was pregnant, working on as a GP. And I definitely say the anxiety of what's come over this past year for many new mums to be has been something else. So yes, I connected with the anxiety, the stress, just the sheer unknown. But then I was also kind of battling with coming to terms with birth trauma, which I'd experienced in my first pregnancy several years ago. So actually, I went through therapy during my pregnancy. So really, it was just one of the most stressful times. And I really feel for every mum that's kind of going through that just now.
Mm-hmm. So if you've had a traumatic birth with a first child, can you expect to feel more anxiety? How can you cope with leading up to that next birth? What would be your advice there?
So birth trauma, sadly, is one of the least discussed topics, and actually is something that affects so many women, particularly over this whole pandemic. What mums have gone through, there's a lot of support that's needed and awareness raised. So in terms of birth trauma, I actually didn't know the extent of how traumatic my experience was until I became pregnant this time, and just speaking to the midwife, and she used the word birth, and that was it, trigger. And that's when I was diagnosed with PTSD secondary to birth trauma 7 years later. And it was actually
Wow.
coming face to face with that, and recognizing, actually seeking out therapy. And as somebody coming from an Indian background, somebody who also was a doctor, I suffered from really severe postnatal depression, but it took me a very long time to actually speak about it because of the things that we're talking about today, the stigma that it carries, the fear of coming out and saying, help, I'm struggling. And it was only this time round where they were like, you need to get a therapist, you need a birth trauma psychologist, which again, you know, if we don't hear about it, we don't know that they exist. And it was really teasing that out and getting those sessions in that really helped me prepare for what was a very difficult pregnancy in a pandemic. But I would say that if anyone is in that boat, just don't suffer alone, and know that you're not alone. It affects so many women, but the earlier we seek out the support, the better it is, because as a result of getting that therapy, getting that support, coming to terms with that, I went on to have the most beautiful birth, which was the biggest fear I had. I thought I was broken, I could never do it again. But I went on to have a gorgeous birth in the thick of a pandemic, and it was such a healing experience.
That is such a lovely, positive story, and that's so nice to hear. Do you think that's because you did get the help you needed? You know, perhaps if you'd not reached out and been honest, that might have not have been the case. Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
And I think, yeah, for sure.
Oh, and Sophie, with your experience, would you say if you're the kind of person before you've become pregnant, before you're going on to have your family, if you suffer with anxiety, if you suffer with any kind of depression, are you going to get postnatal depression? You know, is it something you need to be aware of?
It's not a guarantee, no, for sure. You are at higher risk, definitely, of developing postnatal depression or postpartum anxiety symptoms, yes, but it's not a given. So for anybody who's struggled, doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to happen for them. Although I think we can use it as an opportunity if we are aware that this has been in our lives for a while, that we can use it as an opportunity to take steps to bring some mental well-being practices into our day-to-day to help to preserve our mental health. And I'm a massive believer in that prevention, the preservation of our mental health and well-being, just the same as we do with our physical health. If we know that, for instance, we've had an illness for a while, a physical illness, then we would take steps to make sure that we took care of ourselves for the rest of our lives and that didn't come back again. So we need to really take the same advice, same opinion about what our mental health and well-being looks like. So I would say see it as an opportunity, really.
Okay, thank you. And Mark, let's not forget the dads. There's dads watching, and I think we often see the ladies going through the birth, you know, our bodies have changed, we've given birth, but it's a huge, huge deal for the dads as well. Their lives have changed too. Tell us a little bit about your story and about some of the things that you campaign for.
Yeah, so my background since the last 13 years is mental health, you know, all areas of mental health. But, you know, I think from witnessing a traumatic birth, people don't have to realize that PTSD is actually an anxiety disorder, either witnessing or experiencing a life-threatening event. That's what it is. So, you know, it's nothing worse thinking your wife and baby is going to die in that situation. And you know, I've worked in secure units, I would say, and I've witnessed horrific things. And still to this day, it's nothing worse. And that's how we process that as well. And that's the thing. The symptoms sometimes overlap in the postnatal period. So like mums, a lot of mums are getting diagnosed with postnatal depression, but we have to look at the birth experience because those symptoms do overlap in the postnatal period as well. And some of those treatments for PTSD is totally different to others. So from a personal experience, you know, my personality totally changed in the first year of fatherhood. My wife had severe postnatal depression to the point where she was in crisis teams. You know, I couldn't go back to work. There was loads of reasons. And a lot of fathers like myself had undiagnosed disorders. Like mine was only picked up as ADHD at 40 years of age. She's self-managing that. Then you've got the lack of sleep. As we know, the lack of sleep can have a massive impact on your mental health to the severe point of psychosis sometimes as well. So, you know, all these things I didn't know about as a new dad, you know. So you overthink. And what I always say to people, have a look at, if you think of postnatal depression and the signs and symptoms, there's not one on there that dads can't experience too. And it's all about supporting all parents. If we get a holistic approach in the antenatal period, it'll have far better outcomes for the whole family and that child's development as well, which has a massive impact. So if dad is supported well, he supports mum better. And that's, but unfortunately, you look at the science and the evidence now as well. This is the point we have to realize that fathers as well as mothers can experience postnatal depression.
Yeah, I'd love to come back to in a moment and find out more about where we can find out about the support there. Oh, I've got a bad echo. Am I echoing to anybody else, or is it just me? Oh, it's gone now. Poonam, let's go back to the birth itself, because what I was blown away with was I thought you've got all this wonderful oxytocin, which is the love hormone when you give birth. So why don't we feel fabulous? Why do we get what they call the baby blues and the tearful days? What's actually happening to us physically to make us have all those weird emotions?
Yeah, so commonly the baby blues is what we can expect up to 2 weeks after the baby is born. And it's because if we think about just what a woman has gone through during that birth and the aftermath, you've got a huge shift in chemicals and hormones going on. And that sudden change is what gives birth to the baby blues. So in that period, mums can feel quite emotional, irritable, tearful. And what doesn't help is, we're designed to sleep. We don't sleep in those first few days. We could be healing from varying degrees of, traumas or not traumas, but the birth itself is very complex and you need to heal from that. But you are not sleeping. Mums tend to not look after themselves as well. So the whole focus is shifted onto baby. So all of that plays on your mental health. But what tends to happen is usually in those first 2 weeks, that commonly tends to subside. However, if those feelings linger on beyond the 2 weeks, now postnatal depression, a myth is that it lasts between 2 to 8 weeks, but actually it can affect women right up until a year after the baby's been born. And that's again depending on the varying degrees of sort of circumstances that you've got. How is your baby doing? How is your own health doing? And really the priority needs to be on focusing on your well-being through that time. But things like feelings of hopelessness, feelings, negative thoughts about yourself or your baby, feeling fatigued all the time, aches and pains, all these deep-rooted anxieties and worries that you just cannot shift. They are all serious symptoms that shouldn't be ignored and must be flagged up to your health visitor or to your GP at your postnatal visit as soon as possible.
Yes, definitely. Trying to be honest and open, because I know a lot of us, I for one, when the health visitor came and you do the, check how you're feeling, I don't think I was wholly truthful in how I felt, and why is that, Sophie? Why do we feel that if we're not loving every minute and also we want to be the best mum we can be, and if we say we're struggling or not loving every minute of it, that we're almost failing? Why do we feel this way, Sophie?
I think there are several layers to that, actually. I think essentially we have a bit of an epigenetic, like passed down the generations, fear of mental ill health for many, many reasons. And I could go on all day really about the stigma and the fear that we have around mental ill health. Mainly it's because we can't understand it properly. And the other reason obviously is that we live in a society that sets us up for being the perfect parent, the perfect mother. And it sets us up for feeling like we're failing if we're not matching up to that expectation that we have for ourselves, and also that perhaps our loved ones reflect back onto us as well. So there are so many layers to the reasons why people feel that they can't necessarily reach out. But mainly it's down to the fear factor, I believe. And the fact that maybe we weren't educated to this, we haven't been witness to this perhaps in our lives as well. So the more we can embrace our mental health and understand it better, then we can start to have a better awareness of ourselves and what we need and what's important to us. So therefore, hopefully we then have confidence to reach out when we need to.
Absolutely. And I think it's really good to have this chat if people are watching about to be first-time mums, first-time parents, to sort of remember this talk and be able to identify with it and think, okay, I'm not on my own here. Other people have felt this way. It's not supposed to be easy. Even if on Instagram, everyone's homes look clean and the baby's clean and the hair's done and the makeup's done. It's not real. It's not real. And I think it's really important to hang on to that, because you can then feel that you're not doing a great job. Going back to you, Mark, you mentioned about the help for dads out there. If there's anybody watching now, can you point us in the right direction of where they could go and get a bit of support?
Yeah, definitely. I'm all about the hormones. The hormone shift in fathers during testosterone actually lowers during this time. So I want to encourage dads to actually, skin to skin, baby massage, because that actually helps that bond and attachment as well. And also, as we just mentioned, the oxytocin as well. When dads are really engaged with the baby, that releases a massive surge of dopamine as well. So, we have to remember that dads have actually testosterone, and it's really strong evidence in this. Dr. Anna Mitchin, I would definitely have a look at her work. It actually shifts massively during this time as well. So going back, the one thing I will say is have a look at the still face experiment on YouTube with fathers. This is a part of my work as well. And but for the support, unfortunately, when it comes to special services, we are creating it. We've changed the long-term plan now. Fathers will be screened for their mental health only if mum has postnatal depression. But, mostly the mums used to phone me up and say, Mark, I'm fine. My husband is struggling. It's impacting on my mental health. And since COVID, we've seen a massive shift, even worse, unfortunately, because dads will be left in a car park. And we've got to remember we're parents. We're all parents in this transition in parenthood. We've got to acknowledge the fact that we have to support. There's been a massive shift in fatherhood in the last 20, 30 years. And we need this education for the dads. And like everyone just said, parenthood is tough sometimes. I overthink things and am I good enough, all the thing. But for support, I always say have a look at the Hub of Hope. It's a national database. You put your postcode in, it finds out what's in your area, and also the NHS National Mental Health Helplines. And just speak to somebody, speak to your partners. And if there's any mums out there, have a look for personality changes in the perinatal period, postnatal period as well. It does look different in fathers. Avoiding situations, alcohol, it could be loads of factors. Have a look at the personality changes and speak to somebody.
I was just about to ask you that, Mark, what we should look for in our partners, because everyone's so busy focusing on the baby and the mum trying to get with the feeding sorted and everything, and the guys do get kind of overlooked. So it would be quite nice. You say personality changes, not having that get up and go, not being present. Is that another thing to look out for?
Well, the other thing is, if your dad is in work, leave him get time to change a nappy. It doesn't matter if it takes 5 minutes, 10 minutes, because that little things like that can actually isolate dad and, okay, you carry on. It's very important in our 3 years for dads to get involved, because the rough and tumble play, all those sort of things. But personality changes I would definitely look out for in the antenatal period. Because if dad witnessed a traumatic birth the first time round, if he doesn't get that support in place for the next pregnancy, his anxiety now is going to go even higher, because now he's got to go into a labour ward where he's witnessed that trauma the first time round. A smell can trigger PTSD off, as we know. So, like you said, his anxiety is actually higher than depression in fathers, but it's 1 in 10 fathers actually suffer from postnatal depression. 1 in 10. So 75,000 fathers every year in the UK actually suffer from postnatal depression.
Okay, so the run up to
very common.
The run up to becoming a dad as well. Reach out, get some support, feel involved.
Definitely trying to engage with other dads as well, and definitely just speak out. It's very common to not feel okay like mums.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's very important that we think of the men as well through all of this. And going back, Sophie and Poonam, the sleep deprivation, that, when you bring your baby home, there's no two ways, you're going to be up through the night. Sophie, again, any tips on how we can help ourselves with that? Because you can feel so exhausted, how on earth am I going to get through this next day? And it just looks like a big, long, this is it. This is my life now. you want to press the pause button just for a moment, just to have your old life back for 1 minute and get some sleep. How can we navigate our way through that?
I think actually the lack of sleep is the elephant in the room, isn't it? It's the thing that everybody kind of knows is going to happen, but can't quite bring themselves to properly accept it. And I think the fact that you said press the pause button actually is a real good opportunity. The attitude that we have, the mindset that we have around sleep, we're conditioned to, we're told we have to have 8 hours sleep a night in order to be healthy. And yes, that may be true, but when you have a new baby, your hormones compensate for a lot of that as well, especially the endorphins that you experience and the oxytocin as well. So actually what we need is less sleep, but more quality of sleep. So what I like to suggest to the people that I work with is more about recognizing the quality of the rest you are having rather than the quantity of the sleep that you are having. And don't feel afraid to press that pause button and to say, right now, I can't actually do anything else other than rest. And that's okay. It's about recognizing what your limits are and being as kind to yourself as possible. Would you say to a friend, oh, just keep going, you'll be fine? Or would you say to them, just take your time. The world can wait. This is important. Get the rest that you can. So I think it's about a mindset shift in a lot of ways, really, that's changing from that 8 hours a night to, okay, how much quality rest am I actually getting? When can I get it?
No, that's absolutely right. And I think as well, I was just thinking, having a little look at some of the messages that are coming in, the questions that are coming in. This might be one for Poonam, actually, because it's about taking medication, such as antidepressants. Is this okay during pregnancy and breastfeeding? What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's a very good question and something that a lot of women ask. Certainly, if you are already on any medication and you've just found out that you're pregnant, the key thing is to just not suddenly stop and to speak to your GP about it. Certainly, we have got medications that we can prescribe during pregnancy and if breastfeeding, that don't have any interactions or contraindications. But again, it's important to just chat to your doctor about it. There's a lot of fear and stigma around medication. And the fact is that if you need to have medication or therapy to get you through a difficult patch, that's absolutely fine. Often these medications aren't lifelong. They are just for short periods to get you through. But actually having that is better than just leaving and struggling in silence.
Yeah. And it just got me thinking as well then about being in the lockdown, because let's have a little look at perhaps a positive. I was just thinking back to what Sophie said and pressing the pause button. Do you think the fact that as much as we've worried about having our families in the lockdown, is there a positive that no one can visit? You haven't got to be anywhere at a certain time. I don't know if you felt like this after having your baby, Poonam, actually, that you didn't have to race around. You could sort of establish that feeding, hankering as a little family in your nest. Because you do, the visitors come and you have to put the kettle on. Haven't had to do any of that. That must be a positive.
There's definitely been lots of mixed. I'd say that every day over these last, now she's 11 months old, I think I'm going through the roller coaster of emotions every single day. So there's days where I'm like, this is brilliant, I don't have to get rushed to get ready, to get out to places. And yes, it's been lovely. Like I was homeschooling my son for kind of quite large chunks of this year. So actually the bond between him and his sister has been beautiful and something we probably wouldn't have had in as much intensity as we have done. So yes, there's definitely lots of positives. I think that this will be a year that we will look back in years to come and actually think, gosh, we bonded as a family in ways and we overcame something so huge. So yes, I've definitely got lots and lots of positives, but I also get the lows. You're talking about sleep. Oh my God, I am living through sleep hell at the moment as we've gone through sleep regression. So pressing that pause button has definitely been something that I'm practicing a lot of at the moment.
Yes, maybe Sophie could share some mindfulness with us moments, because I joined in one of your mindful moments the other evening, Sophie, and I really enjoyed it. Very quickly, before we
Oh.
go on to our questions that have come through, thank you very much to everybody. Just give us maybe a little exercise that we could do when we're feeling overwhelmed and just need to press the pause button.
I think that, oh, thank you so much, Lucy. I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
I did.
I think that the biggest thing that I've ever learned as a mum of 4 is that, you know, those demands can be so overwhelming as well, especially when you're tired. And it can feel like you're giving out all the time, constantly give. And often it can feel, especially now in the pandemic and in lockdown, that we have nobody to hold us. And often quite a lot of that kind of feeling of grief and sadness can come from that, the need to be held as well as, you know, as a human in our own right, not just as a parent. And so one of the biggest things I learned was actually is to learn to hold myself in the moment when I'm really feeling the big emotions. And so actually, you know, when we are starting to feel a bit what I like to call spicy or spiky or triggered, the most important thing is that we ground ourselves and hold on and hold ourselves just for a moment. And we quite often, you'll see if people are getting stressed or unhappy, they'll quite often put their hand here, won't they? They'll go, oh. And so what we can do is that's a sort of subconscious holding technique. So we can consciously choose to do this, where we just say, I'm here and I'm okay. Right now, I've got myself and grounding in this moment right now. This is the most important thing and place for me to be. So it's a grounding when you recognize that the spiciness is kicking in and you're feeling overwhelmed and the demands are there. This is an act of just bringing that loving and attention back home. It's like, I'm here, I'm okay, I'm safe, because actually that's what we need to feel, held and safe. And in that moment, you can then, when you've grounded a bit more, then you can bring in a few just nice deep breaths, just to remind yourself you're still alive.
I'm doing it now.
Still here. This is what matters the most. You're here. And also, you might notice a little bit of warmth from your hand that's coming through to your chest as well. That's a really nice, comforting feeling, a nice sensation of comfort. You're triggering some of those nice feel-good hormones too. Oh, that's better, isn't it? It's like, yeah. There's no sort of, you know, magic here. There's no secrets to this. It's not rocket science. This is really simple stuff, but it is how we're designed. And that's what we have to remember.
It's very easy for our minds to get carried away. I wish we spoke to ourselves a bit nicer. You know, I often think that to myself, you know, just talking to yourself a bit nicer. And I am doing a good job. And I'm sure you can agree with this, Poonam, as a new mum, just the smallest things, you know, putting a bit of lipstick on, or if you've managed to brush your hair or make yourself a nice cup of tea, those small little accomplishments, they need to be applauded, don't they?
I think that's definitely something I'm hearing a lot from my postnatal mums, and found myself that throughout this last year, the one thing we have started recognizing more, that actually joy and comfort is tucked away in those little moments. And as a mum, particularly when times are quite overwhelming, where we've been stuck indoors with our little people, which we love to bits, but we just need a bit of break ourselves, is that maybe it's that teeny tiny bit of chocolate tucked away, like in the utility, for example. You know, that is fine to just take out a moment for yourself. And I love everything that you're saying, Mark, about dads too. You know, they need a break as well. And it's just recognizing as units, as a couple perhaps, and talking about giving each other some space and breaks, whether it's just that walk alone. It doesn't mean that you hate your family. It's just that you need to give yourself the same love that you pour into, you know, your relationship and into your children.
Lovely. I'm going to ask you some questions that have come in, because they're questions to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us today, everybody, and getting involved. Someone's asked, how can I get support if I feel I need it when my baby is born? Now, this is an interesting one, because I was unsure about how that works in the current climate. Maybe you guys can shed some light on that if somebody needs, because I don't know, you know, people haven't perhaps got a situation where they can have their mum come and help and the support they would normally get. And that's a bit frightening. So maybe you've got some ideas for people there. Who'd like to jump in and answer that one?
Should I go?
I'll probably start if that's okay.
Oh, God. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Poonam, then we'll go over to Mark.
So the first thing I'd say is, you know, we are connected more than we've ever been connected before. So simple things actually like using FaceTime, phoning, and actually before you even give birth, have that safe group of trusted people that you know that will not judge you in your darkest of moments, that you can reach out and speak to. Secondly, your health visitor, when she comes, the best thing I can say is just be honest. Nobody is there to judge. There's nothing that we as healthcare professionals have never heard before. And we know, we fully anticipate that those first few weeks are going to be tough. So just open up and say, is it normal to feel this way? And if there is a concern there, your health visitor should hopefully be able to kind of help that. She can connect you to local resources. We've got groups happening on Zoom, on FaceTime with other mums that are perhaps in your area that have given birth as well. But feeling that your GP is there, is your shoulder to cry on, and we are used to listening to things. I think there's a lot of fear about GPs. You don't want to burden them, you don't want to waste their time. It's not that important. Everything that matters to you is important. So reach out and call your GP. If it's just a chat, then that's fine. It's the best 10 minutes I'll ever have, which is just having a chat. But if there's other things that we can do to support you, then we will connect you to those resources. It's really, really important that you do that.
That's great comfort. Thank you. Mark, what would be your suggestion?
I apologise, but I always let ladies go first. And I jumped in and I think reason behind that, because my chain of thought goes sometimes. But yeah,
you have to write it down.
I have to write it down. Yeah. Well, me and Sophie do some work together about training and educate parents with our CIC, but actually work with the Honest Midwife as well, and we do online classes. So for parents, they're both parents working together, and we get them to communicate. And I know Let's Talk Birth and Baby, I've got some virtual coffee shops, so I've looked at the Honest Midwife, Let's Talk Birth and Baby, and we actually do a wellbeing session during lockdown online. So that might be some beneficial help for people as well.
Lovely, thank you. And it was interesting actually, just listening then, that word judge. Why do we as new parents feel so judged all the time? If we could take that judgment away, we'd feel so much better, wouldn't we? Okay. Another one's come in. A lady is 3 months pregnant and she's currently taking medication for anxiety. She's worried about damaging her baby, but also worried about how she would cope without the medication, and she doesn't know what to do. Is that one for you, Poonam?
Yeah, so as I said earlier, just don't be making any drastic changes to your medication at the moment. It's just to speak to your GP about it. We tend to kind of review your medication anyway. It's something to speak to your midwife about. And if we need to change it because there are any interactions or, harm to baby, then we would do that. But there are medications, as I've said before, for your mental health that are absolutely safe to take in pregnancy. And at the end of the day, your mental health is what's most important. If we are struggling with anxiety, depression, or mood disorders throughout our pregnancy, it can actually negatively impact not just our own physical health, but the development of the baby. So, I think just getting that support in. And the other thing is, speak to your midwife and alert her early that you're struggling with anxiety, because you can get counselling and support throughout your pregnancy. That as well will be so helpful in preparing you for the aftermath of after baby is born.
Lovely, thank you. Great advice. One's come in here for Mark. It's from a dad who's had a baby nearly a year ago. I think I have postnatal depression, but don't want to tell my wife. Is this going to have an impact on the development of my child?
That's a big common one, because, like I said, I didn't tell my wife how I was feeling because I didn't want to impact on her mental health, and that's what a lot of dads do. They suppress those feelings. There's a gentleman called Scott, and we're doing paternal voices, and we want to share, get the conversation like the gentleman, the father who just mentioned it as well. So have a look at the paternal voices and have a look at the work I'm doing as well on Mark. I think the notes are going to be afterwards. And if he wants to chat with me, I'm always happy to have a chat with anyone.
Lovely.
And definitely, because at the end of the day, like you said, with the fathers, the amount of relationships are sadly ending because the communication between the parents. So it's really important to to speak to somebody in their family members, GP, and talk. Yeah, definitely talk. I'm not sure if I answered that question right then. Did I answer that? Did I answer the question?
You were
but
great.
It is common, very common, very common. The feel those
Yeah.
feelings.
Yeah.
So
I will just
I'm
maybe
always
add
just
in there. Yeah, if it's okay, I would encourage this gentleman as well to speak to your GP. I think sadly the situation we have is that things like postnatal depression still remain unspoken about largely in society, and this judgment that we mentioned earlier is because we feel that we should have our babies and we should just be fine. But postnatal depression largely is associated with women. We don't have the conversation that it can affect men. So then that sense of judgment is even more profound when it comes to men, thinking if I go in, that's a woman's problem. It's absolutely not. It is just another label for a form of mental health that really affects anybody. So please, if you're struggling right now, speak to your GP. There is literally no judgment there whatsoever, and it's a safe space where you can just open up, and there is lots that we can do to support you.
I'm
And
so glad
also,
we're talking about this.
With a GP as well, like make sure you speak to the specialist perinatal mental health teams as well. They'll have some sort of support somewhere along the line as well. So GP definitely, and then obviously engage with other special services in the area, because as you know, it's only now we're getting the education out there to health professionals as well. You know, so it's really important. And don't suffer in silence. Make sure you keep going until you get that proper help.
Yeah, I think so. And I think when you've been through something like this, you're passionate about helping other people, and it will snowball. And hopefully, as what we're trying to do, it will become a conversation that we can have openly and not feel judged. And we're here at the Baby Show talking about all the lovely products you can buy and helping everyone through all the different stages. But this is very important as well. And it's important that people don't feel alone. And this year, the isolation and perhaps not having, I mean, I needed my mum more than ever when I became a mum. So I got so much empathy of people that said, oh, you know, I've not been able to see my mum. She's just come to the window and things like that. It's been a very hard year. I've got another one here. I think we still got time. So a gentleman saying his girlfriend's 8 months pregnant and expecting their first child. She suffered with anxiety over a few years now. And how we know if she's suffering from postnatal depression, or will it just be the normal anxiety? Who would like to take that one?
Is somebody else to go?
Any thoughts? Sophie. Sophie has
I don't mind. I mean, there are similarities between anxiety and depression, but they are very, very different beasts. And I think that actually the kindest thing that you can do for yourselves is to really get to grips with understanding that anxiety, for instance, is a normal part of us. And how can you manage your anxiety? What can you learn about the anxiety, the triggers that triggers your anxiety, and how to take steps to have your kind of daily non-negotiables that you know you need to do to put into play, so that that can prevent the anxiety from becoming unmanageable postnatally. Also, educate yourselves around, there's so much wonderful information out there now about the differences between anxiety and depression, so that you know what the signs are of each one. But equally as well, if you're concerned, then there are some amazing organizations out there that have lots and lots of information on their website, but equally people you can talk to, Pandas, for instance, where you can phone up and just have a good old conversation about what is coming up for you right now. And a big part of the work that I do is about that, you know, having that communication, especially if there are two people in a relationship and there's a baby coming along. It's really important to start to be open and honest about how you're feeling, about the thoughts that are coming up for you, and taking time to reflect on what is really important and how you can manage it for each other and support each other as well. And I think, you know, that will give you an awareness if you're not feeling right postpartum for more than 2 weeks. Then perhaps that'll give you an awareness and the confidence then to say, oh, maybe we need to do a little bit more about this. Let's go to our GP, let's speak to the health visitor, or get on the phone to Pandas again. I think that's
lovely.
the safest way of being, really.
Good advice there. Pandas, that's a good one. I remember Pandas. We have another one here. Make sure I'm not skipping over one. This is a really good question, actually, and I'm sure a lot of people feel like this. I'm soon to be a first-time mum, and I'm worried about bonding with my new baby straight away. Is this normal? Have you got any tips on how I can cope with this?
Yeah, so this is a very common one. And again, it stems from the when we're going through pregnancy, all the pictures we see is just of that first magical moment where, the whole world just transforms. And, I think there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. So I think that it's important to remember that this is a new person that's coming into the world, and a lot will have happened to you. Your experience will be very different and personal. And to just really take that pressure away. Put your baby skin to skin and just go with the flow. And remember that this is your own situation. I think it's really important that you just don't compare it or it's that pressure, I think, that really it just kills all of us, because you think this is how it's meant to be. But again, if after the first couple of weeks you are finding that actually I'm not really warming to this, or I'm not feeling connected to my baby, or having sort of negative thoughts about that process, then just start that conversation early and don't let it become a bigger thing. But I think it's just take it one step at a time, go with the flow. It does take time sometimes to fall in love. And when you're tired and you're sore and you might be having wounds that you're healing from, you're human as well. So yeah, just take away the pressure.
Talk. I did,
Definitely
Sophie
talk,
mentions having conversations.
Yeah.
I used to find that you just wanted to sort of just get it out there, like I'm doing this and I'm doing this, and I fed it that time. Now, do you think I should feed it that time? And normally it would just be some reassurance from somebody. I don't know if you guys felt
Yeah.
like that. It was sometimes you just needed someone to go, yeah, you're doing a great job. That's a brilliant idea. And you go, oh, okay. And you sort of carry on with your day. But when you're alone and you're questioning, you've never done this before. So this is a good one for Mark, actually. Some guys have never actually held a newborn until their own child. It must be terrifying.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember after emergency C-section, and years my little son, like, and I was so anxious. I think I was going to drop him, and when he was going to get weighed, and this is the thing where we need antenatal education for fathers about that skin to skin, the importance of bond and attachment. And there's one thing of knowledge. Sometimes fathers won't get this overwhelming feeling of love, like I certainly didn't. I think that bond attachment grew because I was skin to skin without even knowing it, because my wife was sometimes unfortunately in bed and well. I was doing it automatically. So all my attention now was in that mindful moment on my baby, my son, and we've got a great relationship. But just the knowledge of the fact that parenthood is tough. It is hard. It's wonderful. We've got to realize it is hard work sometimes, and I'm still making mistakes as a parent now. My son's 16 now. You wait to get through adolescence. Gosh, that's another story again. But
we need another show, don't we, Mark?
That's
We need a teenage show next.
Yeah, definitely. Gosh, so I'm still making mistakes as a parent, but at least I'm having a conversation with my son, and my son is more likely to come up to me now, because my wife works in mental health, I work in mental health. He's more likely to have a conversation if he is struggling. And that's what we got to do for the next generation. Because I certainly didn't have, I got wonderful parents and family. They're all coal miners, and they would never, if you had a problem, let's go to the pub, let's have a drink, So we've got to put positive coping skills in place. And I'm very person-centered approach. Find out what works for you. And like I said, it could be simply just having a chat with somebody, and that's enough for some dads. It's very common to feel like that. And some, unfortunately, fathers do need our medication. And in the past, unfortunately, I've had to break confidentiality because these fathers have struggled to the point where, unfortunately, they don't want to be anymore. So, we have to have that early prevention in place for all parents, LGBT plus communities. Every parent it's about gender equality. Everyone should have that early prevention support, and it'll have far better outcomes for the whole family and society and the child's development. Sorry, I'm waffling on now. Sorry.
Go on, Sophie. Lovely. Thanks, Mark.
I wanted to add in that, yeah, absolutely. I think the communication is so key. I mean, one of the biggest things when you're really tired is that the hypothetical mind kind of kicks in. And especially if you've been in a relationship with somebody for a while, you kind of expect that either you can read their mind or vice versa. But the thing is, as much as we know somebody, we can't read their minds. So and also when a baby comes along, there may be things that you've never even broached before with your partner, if you have a partner, that you've never really been that open before. So it's really important that you start antenatally to kind of address this and start to communicate with each other, so that when baby comes along and you are very tired, that it's much more easy to broach these things and to be more open and honest, and to say, is this what you've just said, kind of reflecting back as well, because that hypothetical mind can do all sorts of things to us that make us believe things that aren't necessarily true. So it's important that we remember this communication with our partners, but equally actually with ourselves, if we take time to reflect on the things that are important to ourselves. And if we aren't feeling like we're bonding with our baby, that it's okay to realize that as well. It's okay to talk about that too. I think we worry so much about what other people are going to think about us, especially our loved ones. But quite often that's what they need to hear so that they can support us in the way that we need.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think you feel you've been so blessed to become a parent, and you are so deeply grateful for this miracle, because let's face it, it is a miracle when you have your children. They are little miracles, that you almost feel guilty, that terrible guilt. We've not mentioned the guilt you feel if you are having those feelings. You think, oh my goodness, what must they think of me? I've got the most beautiful little baby and I'm not happy and smiling all day long. That's normal feelings, isn't it?
Very much
Yeah,
so.
I think that the other thing is also to acknowledge about birth trauma, which, a lot of women will be facing varying degrees of, because of what they've had to go through, if they've had to birth alone or without support, and the uncertainties of it all. And often birth trauma can be associated with that kind of sort of altered bonding experience afterwards. So I think it's really accepting and forgiving the process and knowing that it's not your fault, and to ask for an early debrief, and as part of that to acknowledge that if you are feeling a sense of kind of detachment, to really speak about that, because it is to be expected, particularly around this time. And that communication with the healthcare professionals around you will really help.
Definitely.
Lovely.
I think
Thank you.
I think that's the problem with fathers, in not getting that early debrief as well, because the lack of knowledge that they don't realize that fathers can experience birth trauma, witnessing that trauma as well. And Birth Trauma Association's got a page, and it's a support group. I would definitely recommend people have a look at the Birth Trauma Association as well, and understand about PTSD and all parents.
We've just had a couple of people asking about, being prepared. How can they mentally prepare themselves beforehand? Any tips and support they can find before, they're sat there with a pregnant wife at the moment? How can they prepare themselves mentally for what is about to happen?
Well, I've created Beyond Birth specifically for that, actually, and I think it's just about a gentle introduction to mental well-being practices and mental health awareness. So again, if we weren't educated to this when we were younger, then we wouldn't be conditioned to taking care of ourselves. Mark's got showing everybody the book. We wouldn't be conditioned to taking care of ourselves in this way. So I think that actually just starting to understand yourself on these levels, understanding your emotions, understanding your why, understanding what your values are, what's important to you, and also what you do, what you innately do to manage things. We've all got coping skills. We all know how to take care of ourselves, some more than others. So it's just about doing a little bit of reflection. And the guide is very much about just like, okay, so if this happens, then have you thought about this? Or just coming together with your partner and asking a few questions, but also recognizing the ambivalence that you're going to experience, addressing how you can be kinder to yourself, looking at ways that enable you to feel okay, in terms of the comparisons that crop up as well. So all the kind of really common issues. And I think, those are the things that can tip people over when you're most tired, and perhaps you've had an experience of birth or pregnancy that wasn't as you expected, that, that can, in the long run, lead you to not feel very well in your mind and within your emotions. So we do a lot of work in terms of recognizing those emotions, where they're coming from, seeing them as opportunities to take care of ourselves a little bit better as well. So I think all of that, if you do that in pregnancy, or even before, then that can help very much when you roll into that, you know, 4th trimester and on into that 1st year. But equally, it doesn't mean you can't start it in that 1st year of parenting as well, because it's always really beneficial. And it does ripple out to your children. It really does. If you're learning, you know, great ways of coping and regulating, then they will witness that and sense it,
Yes.
even as infants, and that makes a difference to them too.
Absolutely, it has a ripple effect, doesn't it? I'm just looking at the time here, and we've had such a lovely conversation today, and I really do appreciate you coming and joining us. But before we have to go, I'd really love one at a time to go around you, and you give us a little nugget of advice, a little take-home message for anyone that's watching today, where they can find some extra support. Maybe starting with you, Poonam, please.
So I'd say is just to take it one step at a time and be realistic with your expectations, not to compare what you're going through with other people. And of course, recognizing that your mental health is so important. You cannot look after other people, you cannot look after your children if you yourself are not keeping well. So take out time for yourself, reach out for support, and if you're struggling, pick up the phone, call your GP. You're not alone.
Thank you. And Mark?
Yeah, definitely. One topic we haven't talked about is the intrusive thoughts as well. So obviously mums and dads can have these intrusive thoughts during this time. So have a look at the maternal OCD website, I would do it. And Ashley Curry OCD, I would definitely recommend looking at that. If there's a dad who's struggling with intrusive thoughts. Yeah, exactly what's all been mentioned really, you know, don't struggle in silence, suffer in silence, because the early prevention, quicker the help, quicker recovery. You know, speak to your GP. You know, don't worry what other people think. You know, the most important is yourself and your family. Get the help as soon as you can. But I think we mentioned all the helplines already, so don't suffer in silence like I did.
Thank you, Mark. And Sophie?
Very much what Poonam and Mark have said, but equally as well is recognise when the fear is coming up and preventing you from taking action when it comes to your mental and emotional well-being. There is, you know, there is no stigma here that actually mental health is the same as physical health. It's all one big thing. That's who you are. It's your whole person. And what are your daily non-negotiables of taking care of your mental well-being as well as your physical well-being? And if you can think about that when you wake up every morning, you will have a more balanced experience, definitely.
Thank you so much for your time today. Also, I didn't mention that I'd love you just to tell everybody where they can find you. So if anybody's been watching today and would really like to come and follow you, connect with you, have more questions for you, quickly tell us where they can find you. Sorry, I forgot to mention that.
Ladies?
Poonam? Mark's being the gentleman.
So you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Dr. Poonam Krishan.
Lovely. Sophie?
I'm at The Mama Coach, which is 2 M's in Mama, and that's on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter as well. And the Beyond Birth Guide is also on Instagram as beyond_birth_guide. Thank you.
Lovely. Make sure you check that one out. And Mark, where can we find you? Where can the guys connect with you and have a chat? Because I think there'll be a lot of people that will really appreciate that.
Yeah, you can find me up the attic. I've been out since March. But no, I think, yeah, if you look at, I work with Dr. Jane Hanley and same as Sophie, PMH training, CIC. I've been working with Jane for over 11 years. And but also on the fathers_mental health. On Instagram, I'm on Instagram now, gosh. Mark Williams, FMH on Twitter and LinkedIn. And International Fathers Mental Health Day is June the 21st. It's an international day for awareness and education as well. Always a day after Father's Day.
Thank you so very, very much. That was a lovely conversation. I'm sure it's helped a lot of people, and enjoy the rest of your days. And do make sure you come back and see us on the stage at the Baby Show very, very soon. Thank you very much to all of you.
No, thank you, Lucy.
Thank you.
Thank you. You did it so good.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.